Meet Ghislain Peridium, the protagonist of our story. He's infamous for being a wild, an utterly uncontrollable swordmaster, often locked away in his room. He's supposedly out of his mind. And if that wasn't enough, he's known as the Worthless, eldest son of Count Peridium. With titles like these, you'd expect just another pampered noble brat, but that's far from the truth. At least, not anymore. His opponent is quickly figuring that out. The hard way. This bearded guy facing Ghislain can't believe what's happening to him. He's getting thoroughly beaten by someone he thought was just useless scum. Meanwhile, Ghislain remains calm and collected, cool as ever throughout the fight. Internally, he's actually pretty satisfied, because all the money he dumped into setting up this trap is finally showing brilliant results. With a smirk, Ghislain asks the bearded man if he's enjoying this unexpected twist. That only pisses the guy off even more, because it feels like Ghislain knew exactly how things were going to play out. And guess what? Ghislain proudly admits it. He didn't just anticipate the enemy's plan. He knew everything from the very start. The number of soldiers, the identity of the spies who provided reinforcements. He had it all perfectly figured out. The bearded man is utterly stunned. He starts yelling furiously that his secret weapon has been exposed by someone he once dismissed as worthless. But Ghislain isn't in the mood for his whining. He shuts him up with a solid kick to the face, making it clear this guy can scream all he wants. But no matter how many fights break out, Ghislain is confident he'll come out on top every single time. So, how is he so sure of winning? Simple. Because he knows everything. Let's rewind for a second. Almost a year ago, in the kingdom of Lithuania, near the Peridium estate, Ghislain Peridium woke up in pure shock. He was alive, but he shouldn't have been. The very last thing he remembered was being caught in a desperate, hopeless battle, squaring off against one of the continent's elite, a man named Adjuin, one of the 7 noble knights, the very person destined to end his life. Now, Ghislain wasn't just some random nobody either. He was once known as one of the top 7 mercenary kings on the continent, feared and respected throughout the land, under the legendary name Ghislain Peridium. But before finally ending Ghislain's life, Adjuin mocked him, sneering, "I never expected to see the trash of the fallen Peridium family again." For what Adjuin knew, Ghislain had vanished after his sister's death, and his name had become nothing but a fading memory. That completely threw Ghislain off guard. He demanded to know how Adjuin knew so much about his past. Adjuin revealed he'd been tracking him for a long time, because, shockingly, he was one of the people involved in the destruction of the Peridium family. He had worked alongside the Delphine household to bring them down. Hearing this, Ghislain froze instantly. That meant the Delphine household hadn't acted alone. There were others who played a role in his family's ruin. And now, one of those very people was standing right in front of him. His hatred and thirst for revenge surged, like never before. And then, Adjuin cut his head clean off. But strangely, Ghislain later woke up whole, unharmed, and very much alive. Not only was his body miraculously intact with no sign of injury, but he even looked noticeably younger. He looked around, clearly bewildered by what was happening. Just then, someone called out to him, addressing him as young master, and urging him to come out. The man was actually a loyal soldier from the Peridium household, Ricardo. But before Ricardo could say much more, he found a sharp sword aimed straight at his neck. As Ghislain fiercely demanded answers immediately, Ricardo, utterly clueless about the situation, agreed to answer whatever his master asked, though he couldn't understand why a sword was necessary. For a simple conversation, even Ghislain is completely blindsided by Ricardo's reaction. After all, this guy was supposed to be an enemy. Ricardo wrenches himself free from Ghislain's grip and reminds him he'd just collapsed from exhaustion after his little tantrum earlier. He'd been stressing hard over leading a raid on the orcs, naturally. This explanation makes absolutely zero sense to Ghislain. Then Ricardo tells him to grab his gear and let's go, because everyone else is waiting outside. Ghislain, still completely lost, asks where they're even going. Ricardo informs him they're heading to the Peridium estate. Hearing his family name completely shocks Ghislain. As far as he knows, that estate was destroyed. But as they crest a hill overlooking it, he gets an unobstructed view, and it's unmistakably the Peridium estate. Fully intact, he'd once seen it burn to the ground, and now here it stands. Ricardo, a bit confused, mumbles under his breath, pondering why his master keeps calling his own home, as if it had fallen. If the Count hears that, there could be serious consequences. Trying to make sense of it, Ghislain pinches his cheek, hoping this is just a dream. But the pain is real, and that's when it finally hits him. He's younger now, the estate is pristine, and everything seems to have reverted to how it was, which means he's traveled back in time. Back then, his younger self was so resentful toward the family that immaturity, rooted in feelings of inferiority, caused endless trouble. Eventually, people in the household started actively avoiding him and unable to handle the criticism. He ran away. Years later, he became a mercenary, survived brutal battles, honed his skills, and earned a name for himself. He returned to Peridium, hoping to make amends. But by then, the estate had already been reduced to ashes. He had lost everything, but now somehow it's all back. Everyone he cared about is still alive. He's completely overwhelmed, realizing he's been given another chance. But there's no time to celebrate. From what Ricardo mentioned, they're on their way to raid the orcs. And Ghislain remembers this day all too well. It was the day nearly everyone in his squad died. In his past life, he had joined the orc raid squad to prove himself. The report back then had mentioned only 3 orcs. So Ghislain, with no command experience, thought it'd be easy peasy. But when they arrived, they were ambushed by over 20 orcs. Because of his recklessness and pride, most of the squad was wiped out. Right now, our MC feels pretty confident that the situation is manageable, mainly because those orcs don't seem to have any real tactics. But the real issue is whether his soldiers will actually trust him, considering they all think he's just some worthless loser. Unfortunately, he doesn't even get a moment to prepare, because out of nowhere, a watchtower gets completely wiped out as a massive horde of orcs comes charging in. Ghislain is absolutely stunned by the sudden attack. He hadn't expected these creatures to strike so soon. The orcs are tearing through the soldiers like it's nothing, and each one is powerful, enough to wipe out multiple foot soldiers. Single-handedly, raid squad commander Schofield jumps into the fray and shouts for everyone to form a defensive line. But honestly, it looks like no formation or tactic is going to stop these savage beasts who are slaughtering people nonstop. Even Schofield is convinced they're doomed. Getting ambushed like this, with zero preparation, is just brutal. And to make things worse, there are way more of these monsters than anyone expected. With the way things are spiraling, Schofield is sure they're all going to die. Then suddenly, someone shouts at the commander when Schofield turns around. He sees a massive beast about to crush him with its axe. He barely has time to react. That's when Ghislain lunges in, yanks Schofield out of harm's way, and slices straight through the monster's hand, like it was just a flimsy cucumber. Everyone is utterly dumbfounded. How the hell did Ghislain make that look so easy, especially since he's supposedly useless? The beast collapses as Ghislain grumbles in irritation about still not being able to use mana. He strides confidently up to the commander, offers his hand, then boldly demands command of the troops. But Scoven immediately refuses him. He refuses to believe a so-called worthless brat should be leading them in such a dire moment. He even scoffs at Ghislain, asking if he truly believes this is some kind of game, even if Ghislain is the young master. Scoven declares he won't just hand over the authority given by the Lord so easily. But Ghislain had already anticipated this refusal, that no one would believe in him. And now he's absolutely fed up. Suddenly, another monster charges, and Scoven quickly steps in, thinking Ghislain is far too inexperienced to handle it. But Ghislain decides it's time to shut these loudmouths up and truly show them what he's capable of. He hurls his sword at the beast with incredible speed. The commander immediately bellows at him for disobeying his orders, but instantly shuts up when he sees the orc drop dead from a single, precise hit. The sword clearly struck with terrifying precision. The commander just stands there, stunned, looking like he's suffering from a severe case of constipation. Meanwhile, Ghislain stares him down, then asks if he even knows the most crucial thing in battle. Of course, the commander has no idea, because clearly, he's the real useless one. Ghislain shifts his focus toward the terrified soldiers and reminds Scoven there's no winning a battle when fear has completely gripped the troops. The first step must be to gain momentum. With that, our guy dashes forward once more, yanks his sword from the monster's skull, and launches himself into the air. He lands squarely atop another orc and drives his blade straight through its head. Scoven can hardly believe his eyes. Meanwhile, our boy boldly challenges the monsters, taunting them to come at him if they're ready to die. As expected, these brainless beasts charge right at him, and he just slices through them all. With the blazing precision and speed of a ninja, he's on an absolute energy rush, tearing apart every single one that dares to cross his path. His movements, his reflexes, everything is happening. Everything is happening at such incredible speed that Scoville is left completely frozen, staring in utter, total disbelief. Even as a mana user, he can't even keep up, so he can't begin to fathom how his skinny young master is pulling this off. Scovin notices that despite the obvious signs of fatigue, our guy is still evading attacks with the bare minimum of motion, and every sword strike lands perfectly on the enemy's weak points, like a master swordsman who can't even use mana, or maybe even someone beyond that level. But our MC isn't done. He keeps provoking the monsters, mocking them for being nothing like the fearsome warrior race they're rumored to be. The other soldiers are just as stunned, watching as every single orc charges toward the young master. They turn to their commander, waiting for orders, but the cowardly commander doesn't even come close to showing the kind of guts our boy has. He's still trying to process the fact that the young master deliberately charged into a swarm of orcs just to draw their attention. He doesn't get why he's now running straight toward the edge of the cliff. But then it soon clicks. Ghislain plans to lure the orcs right off the cliff. Acting fast, Scoven orders his troops to raise their shield wall and prepare to back him up. Meanwhile, the orcs are right behind our guy, chasing him down. Our MC trusts that Scovon, being the capable commander he is, will catch on to the plan. As much as he'd love to hack every one of these orcs to pieces himself, he just doesn't have the stamina. But this plan isn't bad either. At the cliff's edge, the orcs realize too late, with soldiers already waiting behind them. In a defensive formation, our guy doesn't hesitate. He bravely leaps off the cliff, signaling Scoven to follow his lead. The soldiers charge in, slamming into the monsters, shoving them off the cliff to a brutal end below. The risky move works. Every last orc is eliminated, and though drained, the soldiers pull through. Scoven is still frozen in shock when he spots our MC, clinging precariously to the cliffside, his sword jammed into the rock to hold himself up. Even in this dire situation, there's no fear on his face, only a confident smirk aimed directly at Scoven. For a second, the big mustache commander is thrown off, but then a proud smile spreads across his face. He quickly reaches out a hand, but it falls just short. The grip on the sword loosens, and just like that, the boy starts to fall, leaving everyone stunned by this sudden, shocking twist. Meanwhile, Ghislain begins slipping into unconsciousness, drifting into a hazy, dreamlike state. There, he hears his sister's voice and sees scattered fragments of memories involving her. He doesn't quite understand what's happening until suddenly she grabs his hand, and just like that, he's pulled out of the dream. He jolts awake in bed, confused and utterly shocked that he's even alive. As he tries to sit up, a wave of searing pain rushes through his entire body, making even the smallest movements agonizing. Every inch of him aches, a harsh reminder of how far he pushed himself. But in a strange way, it reassures him that he survived. At that very moment, a maid enters the room with a relieved smile. It takes him just a second to realize it's Belinda. She's clearly both happy and upset, scolding him for all the stress he caused. But Ghislain doesn't hesitate. He throws his arms around her, hugging her tightly. She's totally confused by the sudden affection, unaware that to him, seeing her again after so long is absolutely overwhelming. You see, Belinda had been his personal maid since childhood. Through all the chaos he caused, she was the one who always stuck by his side. But after his family's downfall, she vanished, and he never thought they'd meet again. Now, with her right in front of him, he feels an urgent need to be honest. So he drops a bombshell, telling her a catastrophe is heading straight for Perry DM. He even admits he actually died and came back to life. Naturally, Belinda just brushes it off. She agrees the orcs nearly killed him, but she refuses to believe his bizarre tale. He tries to explain further, but she just scolds him for being reckless. Realizing she won't believe him, no matter what, he gives up. Belinda then shifts the topic, reminding him of the upcoming festival, something he would have missed if he'd stayed injured. That catches Ghislain completely off guard. Seeing his blank expression, she reminds him that Lady Elena has been looking forward to going with him. It's the perfect opportunity for the siblings to reconnect. Suddenly, Ghislain remembers this festival in his past life. He never got to enjoy it. It was around this time that something truly traumatic had happened. So when he asks how much time is left, she tells him it's next week. He has a week to prepare. But this isn't just about a festival. In his previous life, this exact day marked a tragedy that haunted him forever. On the day of the festival, his sister Elena was supposed to die. Right on cue, Elena walks into the room. Ghislain instantly pulls her into a tight hug, catching her completely off guard. Blushing, she accuses him of playing some weird prank. She doesn't realize how real his feelings are. He's simply overwhelmed to see her alive. But since he won't let go, Elena ends up forcefully pulling herself away, leaving his weakened body swaying under the pressure. Turns out, she's got some serious strength. From her reaction, it's clear the two siblings don't exactly have a warm relationship. Elena bluntly says she's only here because Belinda asked her to come. Apparently, there's some past grudge, as Elena still remembers the time he insulted her. Ghislain is initially clueless, but eventually realizes, he wasn't exactly a stellar brother in his past life. Honestly, he was kind of an asshole. So he does something absolutely shocking. He apologizes. Both Belinda and Elena are absolutely stunned. Ghislain admitting fault? That's completely unheard of. They joke that maybe he got hit in the head too hard by the orcs and knocked something loose. But Ghislain quickly shuts that down, saying he really did mean it. Then another wave of pain hits, and he doubles over. Elena doesn't miss a beat, seizing the chance to poke fun, clearly relishing every single moment. It's obvious who came out worse in that fight. But Ghislain doesn't mind a bit. Even with her sharp, sarcastic comments, he's just so glad to see them, being exactly the way he remembers. There's something truly comforting about it. And in that moment, he can't help but think, why did the old him waste so much time on things that didn't matter? Flashback to the upcoming festival preparations. Ghislain had turned down Elena's offer to attend together, using the raid squad incident as an excuse. That ended up being the last time he ever saw her. Not long after, Elena and her bodyguards were found brutally torn apart. Ghislain still regrets not being there for her when it mattered most. Suddenly, a knock interrupts the moment. Two knights appear at the door. They're Elena's bodyguards. The one with dark brown hair is Jamal, and standing behind him is Philip. Elena questions their presence, since they were told to wait outside. One of them apologizes and explains that the servants have requested her to supervise the festival preparations. This catches Ghislain completely off guard. He doesn't understand why Elena needs to be involved in that. Belinda looks visibly disappointed at his reaction and reminds him of the worker shortage in Perry DM. Even someone like Elena has to pitch in. It's only now that Ghislain truly realizes this, since he never really paid attention to such things before. But now that he's here, he actually offers to help. His little sister is visibly stunned. Both girls immediately start wondering if he might have seriously gotten knocked in the head, or something similar. Soon, they arrive at the bustling festival site, where everyone's busy setting up their stalls. But when they hear Gislin wants to lend a hand, a strange unease creeps over everyone. His sister keeps trying to push him away, insisting that the best way he can help is by not getting in the way or causing any trouble. But Gislin steadfastly refuses to leave her alone. After all, Elena's body was discovered near the slums, quite a distance from the festival location. Someone must have either lured her out or dragged her all the way there. He wants to make absolutely sure nothing like that happens again. And for that, he needs to fully understand the castle's layout. Just then, a knight comes rushing in, calling for Gislin. It's old man Fergus, out of breath, but clearly emotional. He starts crying, admitting how terrified he was. After hearing about the orc attack, Gislin's sister jumps in too, pointing out how oddly he's been acting lately. She thinks it might be best if Fergus just takes him back. Seeing no other choice, Gislin agrees, but requests to be taken to the abandoned training field, in the castle instead. Fergus, puzzled, asks why. Gislin simply says he wants to train, though unsure what the young master is planning. The old man doesn't press him further, and leads him to the training hall. As Gislin steps inside, the first thing that strikes him is how incredibly well-kept the training hall is. It's far better than he ever imagined. It's the perfect spot for him to train, and the equipment is way more advanced than anything he ever came across during his mercenary days. The old man explains that they've kept the place in tip-top shape, just in case Gislin ever wanted to return. He'd always believed Gislin would eventually overcome whatever inner battle he was fighting. That genuine concern makes Gislin stop in his tracks. He never truly realized how much the old man had been trying to support him all along. The realization hits him like a ton of bricks. A wave of crushing guilt washes over him for not noticing it sooner. Quietly, he pats the old man's shoulder and murmurs something, half joking, half serious. Dying sucks, so I might as well try living a while longer. The old man, as usual, is completely baffled hearing him talk, like he's already crossed over into the afterlife. But Gislin just shrugs and admits it plainly. Yeah, I did die and came back. Not that the old man buys any of it, of course. Without dwelling on it further, Gislin snaps his focus back to training. He dismisses the old man, telling him he can leave now. Watching Fergus show him so much respect makes Gislin reflect on how he's always treated those around him like enemies. But now, looking back, he realizes he was just being incredibly narrow-minded. Still, he can't afford to get distracted. There's serious work ahead of him. In his past life, he'd heard that Elena's death was secretly orchestrated by a nefarious lord from a neighboring territory. That single act dragged Peridium into a brutal war that ultimately led to its utter destruction. Her death was the first domino in the catastrophic fall of his house. And now, he's determined to fix everything. Starting right here, first priority, rebuild his body. Time's short, but if nothing else, he needs to gain absolute control of his mana. In this world, mana is a mystical, potent force that allows humans to effortlessly surpass their limits. Most people struggle to even sense or absorb it properly. But for Gislin, even in the middle of chaotic battles, that part came to him naturally. He starts bundling the scattered mana particles from the air, weaving them together like fine, spinning thread. With countless battles under his belt, maybe even tens of thousands, forming a mana core is second nature to him. Damn, but if it were truly that easy, he wouldn't be one of the fabled top 7 strongest individuals in the entire land, channeling power from a half-burnt grimoire and tapping into the innate mana core that all humans possess. Gislin manages to forge not just a second, but an astonishing third core. He links them into a complex, interconnected mesh, forming a massive burst of raw energy. But the grueling effort takes its toll. Blood trickles from his nose and mouth, and sweat pours down his face. He's definitely hit his current limit. Back in his previous life, though, he had managed to reach 5 cores. The entire technique revolves around generating an overwhelming burst of power in a short time, but it guzzles mana at an insane rate. That's actually why he lost to Eden before. The guy showed up with a whole night order, while Gislin was already running on empty. In a fair one-on-one, however, he would have utterly crushed him. This technique might be unstable, but it's enough for now this time. He's got a younger body, and all the time he needs to master it. And this time, Eden's head, it's his for the taking. As for the traitors backing House Delphine, the very ones who helped ruin their homeland, they're going down too. A week quickly goes by, and the long-awaited day of the festival finally arrives. Giselin is all geared up, striding through town with a steady, unshakable confidence. But as he moves along, he unexpectedly spots his sister, who looks utterly surprised to see him. She's utterly stunned, not just because he showed up to the festival, which he's never liked, but also because he's been acting strangely lately. All she's been hearing is how he's done nothing but train nonstop for the past week, trying to play it cool. Giselin brushes off her concern casually, reminding her that as the heir to a knightly family, training is simply a normal part of his life. But she doesn't let it slide so easily. She hits him with a harsh reminder that he's always despised the idea of becoming lord. That very attitude, she points out, it was a major reason he never saw eye to eye with her father. Even though her words sting a bit, she walks away with a triumphant smile, clearly thrilled to see him finally embrace the role he was always meant for. Her comment lingers in Giselin's mind, making him realize that his actions have already begun to shift how people perceive him, and potentially even altered the course of his future. While major events might still unfold as he remembers, the minor details are becoming increasingly unpredictable. Now, using his knowledge of what's to come wisely has become his ultimate responsibility. He'll need to handle every situation with extreme care. With that in mind, he's fully prepared to confront the very individuals who will kill his sister. For now, he sticks by Elena's side, staying alert. But after some time, she starts to get bored and complains that this year's festival feels just as dull as all the others. Meanwhile, Giselin is lost in thought. The festival's almost over, and still nothing major has happened. This makes him wonder, could the future have changed simply because he stayed so close to Elena? Just as that thought hits him, two bodyguards appear. They suggest taking Elena to a livelier part of the festival so she can enjoy herself a bit more. As they start to escort her away, Giselin quickly puts the pieces together. These two, Jamal and Philip, are the trusted knights who protected Elena since childhood. In his previous life, they were said to have been killed while defending her. But now doubts start creeping in. Giselin becomes convinced it's a trap. These guys must be the traitors within the family. He follows them quietly. The spot they arrive at is completely deserted, which immediately annoys Elena. She starts complaining about how pointless this all is. As she vents, Giselin's suspicions only grow. At first glance, it's just an empty street, but debris and objects block every exit. That clearly shows this was prepared ahead of time. Just then, he's pulled out his thoughts, when Elena suddenly seizes his arm and begins dragging him along, startled by her incredible strength. Giselin jokingly asks if she's been hitting the gym, because for a young lady, she's seriously powerful. But before she can even reply, Jamal steps in to stop her, and the expression on his face says it all. His intentions are clearly far from good. Elena starts trembling, panic creeping in, as she wonders why everyone is acting so strangely. Jamal quickly apologizes for scaring her, but then his expression twists into something even more disturbing. He calmly says he just wants her to wait a little longer, claiming it's a small favor. Elena, now terrified and feeling utterly helpless, is interrupted by the arrival of someone new. A man wearing glasses steps into the scene, trailed by two of his goons. His name is Frank, and he looks quite satisfied with how well Jamal has handled things so far. Frank then turns to Jamal, confused about why Giselin is even here. He doesn't recall ever asking for this extra baggage. Jamal tries to reassure him, saying he'll handle the kid himself, and Frank won't even have to pay. Giselin, it turns out, had blindly followed his sister, completely unaware that he was walking right into a death trap. Finally, Giselin speaks. The first thing he demands is how this traitorous bastard plans to get away with betraying the Peridium family. But the man just laughs, barely fazed. He arrogantly claims all he has to do is run far away. He's done with this broken, poverty-ridden land that's already been ravaged by barbarians. And he's not alone. Plenty of others want to leave Peridium too. But before he can finish that sentence, the main character strikes. No words, just blood spilling from his mouth as he drops. Sliced clean in two. Everyone is stunned. Jamal hits the ground, lifeless. And Ghislain glares at the corpse. Furious, he reminds the traitor that, even if people chose to abandon this land, they'd never betray their own kind. His fury ignites as he locks eyes with the second traitor. The traitor panics, yanking Elena closer, hoping she'll shield him from the same gruesome fate. He's dead wrong. A sword plunges straight through his skull. He quivers, gasping for air as death claims him too. Now Frank's goons start getting cold feet, wondering if they even want to get tangled up in this. What throws them off even more is that this guy, supposedly the eldest son of Peridium, isn't supposed to have any real combat experience. No training, no skills. At least, that's what they believed. But Frank confirms it. This is the eldest son. Still, he can't comprehend how this guy just wiped out two men, like it was nothing. And even more shocking, his attacks are imbued with mana. Meanwhile, the girl clung to her brother, shaking with fear, yet without hesitation. He knocked her out with a swift strike to the neck, telling her to get some rest. Frank, that smug bastard, thanked our guy for taking care of the two knights, pretending they'd planned to handle them themselves. He even praised Ghislain's godlike skills, and couldn't help but ask where he learned them. But Ghislain wasn't having any of it. He shut them down cold, making it clear it was none of their damn business. He quickly sized them up, three of them all together, but only the one in the middle seemed to be giving off any real mana. Still, no matter who they were, Ghislain was ready to end this, fast. Before making his move, he demanded to know who hired them to stage the ambush. Frank, with that annoying smirk, brushed it off, acting like someone about to die. Didn't deserve to ask questions. Of course, Ghislain knew they wouldn't give up the information so easily, but he had his own methods of making people talk. One of the goons suggested just cutting his head off, but their boss shut him down, saying he wanted him alive. He planned to break every bone in Ghislain's body until he was left a broken mess, writhing agonizingly in pain, ensuring his torment was drawn out and cruel. Instantly, two of the thugs charged forward, but Ghislain was one step ahead. He suddenly whipped out a firecracker and hurled it right at them. That completely threw one of the thugs for a loop. He froze for just a split second, utterly bewildered as to why anyone would use something as trivial as a firecracker. But that tiny flicker of hesitation was all Ghislain required. In a flash, he closed the distance and instantly took one down. The second thug lunged at him next, but Ghislain didn't even flinch. He effortlessly parried the attack, disarmed him, and yanked the sword from his grip. Without wasting a single second, he spun around and cut the guy down, like he was swatting a fly. As the second thug hit the ground, their leader, Frank, tried to pull a cheap move, sneaking up behind Ghislain to land a surprise blow. But our hero's reflexes were absolutely razor sharp. He blocked the ambush like it was nothing. Frank was utterly stunned, realizing his sneak attack had completely backfired, and Ghislain wasn't about to let that slide. He retaliated in an instant, his sword moving so fast that Frank could barely react. The blade slashed deep across his throat, and the pipe he'd been smoking clattered to the ground. Frank, now desperate, launched another furious attack, but Ghislain easily parried it yet again. Even Frank had to admit, without using mana to shield his neck, he would have been utterly finished. And even Ghislain had to give him some credit. He'd focused all his mana around his neck to greatly reduce the damage. Pretty impressive, honestly. That's when Frank finally decided to get serious. Clutching his sword tightly, he hurled himself at Ghislain. But just as he did, he caught a glimpse of Ghislain's grin, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. That split second of confusion was all it took. Ghislain completely overpowered him and slams a brutal kick straight to his face. Frank somehow manages to land on his feet. Instead of crashing down, a confident smirk on his face. He boasts that with his immense mana, a mere move like that won't faze him. But his bravado shatters instantly as he violently coughs up a geyser of blood. His face contorts in utter confusion. He has no idea what just hit him. Even though his body was reinforced with dense mana, he just can't believe Ghislain still managed to shatter that defense with nothing but sheer, raw skill. Meanwhile, Ghislain's thoughts drift to the mystery surrounding his sister's untimely death. He never knew who was responsible until now, and now that he knows, he's ready to make this bastard pay dearly. He warns Frank to brace himself, because things are about to get very real. Then, Ghislain activates his terrifying third core. Frank stands there utterly stunned, but he doesn't get the luxury of time to react, as Ghislain is already charging him. They clash with such incredible speed that only the glowing trails of their blades are visible. Frank fights back with every ounce of strength, but it's clear he's rapidly losing ground. His hands are going numb, and no matter how much mana he channels, it's simply not enough. His sword even begins to crack from the sheer pressure. He's never even heard of a technique that boosts mana to this insane level, especially with such precise control. It's like Ghislain has transformed into an entirely new person, and that new person lands a brutal, decisive strike, slashing Frank hard across the body. But Ghislain isn't finished yet. He then drives his sword deep into the man who killed his sister. Still, he doesn't let him die just yet. There are answers he craves, burning questions he desperately needs resolved. Gritting his teeth, Ghislain demands to know who ordered the hit on Elena. But Frank isn't about to give up information so easily. He quickly whips out hidden ninja daggers, trying to strike at Elena again. Before he can even twitch, threads snap into place, locking his arm mid-motion. It's Ghislain effortlessly manipulating them. He decides to grant Frank one final opportunity. Answer everything truthfully, and he'll sheath his blade. Frank, now utterly bewildered, realizes these threads are woven from pure mana, crafted and controlled by Ghislain himself. Ghislain knows someone of Frank's caliber should be able to mend themselves. Not that it'll matter once he shatters his mana core. Without a moment's hesitation, he begins to funnel magic into the very blade, already deeply lodged in Frank's gut. The bastard screams as his mana core begins to fracture. It's an incredibly dangerous move. One misstep, and the resulting mana backlash could obliterate the entire area. It genuinely appears Ghislain is risking a complete self-annihilation. But he's no rookie. He can absolutely handle this. Even Frank can discern Ghislain isn't bluffing when he stares into Ghislain's eyes. All he sees is a blood-soaked Reaper. Realizing he has absolutely no escape, Frank finally coughs up the name Count Desmond, the true mastermind behind Elena's assassination. He further confesses that this entire incident was merely part of a much larger scheme, a calculated setup designed to ignite a war between the Peridium and the Guard families. Ghislain doesn't hold the name Desmond in high regard. In his past life, dirty work of this nature was always handled by families loyal to the Dukes. If his instincts prove correct, Duke Delphine is likely the true puppet master here. Still, the stark fact remains, Frank came here to kill his sister. So, Ghislain ensures he finishes him off and exacts his revenge for the past. In his final, agonizing moments, Frank believes Ghislain is reneging on his word, but Ghislain coldly reminds him of every single sin he's committed. He has no right to feel fear now. That karma has finally come to collect. But then, something completely unexpected happens. Frank starts laughing. Even as he bleeds out, he claims nothing will truly change. Even if Ghislain kills him, the damage is already done. He's already completed his mission. With the Degard family, no matter what Ghislain does now, Peridium is doomed, and war is inevitable. Ghislain swiftly covers the bastard's filthy mouth to shut him up and quietly tells him the truth. He's already died once and come back. So there's no way he's letting history repeat itself. Those were the last words Frank heard. before Ghislain activated the mana core. Shattering process, the mana inside surged backward, and Ghislain redirected it into the sky, triggering a massive explosion like some warp firework. Exhausted, Ghislain could barely breathe, but at least everyone who needed to be dealt with had been taken care of. Phew. Then he noticed his unconscious sister lying there, seemingly safe and peacefully asleep. Just as he let his muscles relax and close his eyes for a moment, blood suddenly spilled from his mouth, and he doubled over in pain. He thought to himself, back when he was the mercenary king, destroying 3 cores would have been easy. But now, with his fragile body, it's clearly limiting him. Even so, he wasn't ready to give up. He quickly made his way to a nearby house and discovered a corpse. In his previous life, authorities had found a second body at this same location, along with Elena's. And for what Frank had mentioned earlier, that body was supposedly Degard's son. There was also the escort knight, who died during the event. These bodies were the reason why the Peridium family, in his past life, had assumed the Degard family was behind Elena's assassination. The moment those corpses were discovered, war had broken out. This time, Ghislain made sure there would be no such evidence. He set the entire house ablaze. After that, he picked up his sister and began walking away. That's when we see some creep in a cap, lurking in the shadows, secretly watching him. Later, that same guy shows up at a shady council. Basically, all the people running the show behind the scenes, and reports that the mission failed. Naturally, the bigwigs weren't thrilled about this news. One figure, cloaked in a dark hood, immediately pins all the blame on Ghislain Peridium. The moment that name is uttered, the entire room stiffens. How could nobody from the north pull off something this massive? Another council member scoffs, declaring Ghislain has always been a worthless piece of trash. Blaming this failure on him sounds utterly ridiculous. But the hooded figure vehemently insists Ghislain was nothing like the man their intel described. The way he executed everything was far too skilled, almost as if he'd become an entirely new person. He tries to calm the angry higher-up by explaining he's already handled things with the Degard family. Therefore, sparking a territorial war won't be an issue. He pleads for just one more shot to prove himself. But one of the higher-ups explodes in a furious rage. The chaos from his monumental failure has already caused serious, widespread problems. And now the entire council is in complete disarray. They all agree the only viable solution is to eliminate Ghislain. Then, the top dog among them finally speaks, cutting sharply through the growing noise. He asks the hooded man how he plans to deal with Ghislain. The reply, he's going to set up a duel. Make it look entirely natural. Any opponent? Someone powerful. When asked who this person is, the hooded figure reveals it's Cain Loges, a powerhouse swordsman known for his sheer brute strength. Despite his youth, Cain is utterly unmatched in physical combat. And here's the kicker. He's Ghislain's own cousin. That familial connection would make their encounter feel perfectly natural, not a stage setup. The room falls silent as they mull over this audacious idea. But the top guy doesn't let him off the hook so easily. He sternly warns that if this mission fails too, there won't be another chance, ever. Shaken, the hooded man quickly swears he'll deliver undeniable results this time. The scene shifts to Peridium Castle's Grand Training Hall, where Fergus arrives, ready to inform our boy that it's time for a meal. But just then, he spots a rope-like thread of mana flying directly toward him. It swiftly snatches the sword hanging beside him and quickly retracts, pulling the sword along. Ghislain, having practiced for a while now, is clearly pleased to see he's making significant progress. Just then he spots Fergus, who immediately bows his head low, an apology for interrupting their session. But Fergus can't suppress his curiosity and asks how Ghislain pulled off that move. Ghislain casually explains, revealing it's something called mana threads. In his previous life, using mana like string was second nature to him. But now his current skill level is too low, and he lacks the mana needed to wield it as before. To do so fully, he'd have to implode his core. However, by creating just one thread, he can minimize the mana cost and still use it effectively, despite his limited resources. Fergus admits that despite training his mana for ages. He's never witnessed anything like this. And now that he thinks about it, not long ago, Giselin wasn't even using mana at all, let alone training with it. He's baffled by how Giselin even conceived of the idea, shaking himself out of his stupor. Fergus returns to his original purpose. He respectfully nods and thanks Giselin for protecting the young lady. But Giselin simply brushes it off. There's no need for thanks. She's his sister, and he would have done it no matter what. A few days pass, and the festival is put on hold. Understandable given that a guardian knight just tried to traffic a noble lady. Meanwhile, Elena is absolutely fuming. No one believes her. When she insists Giselin was the one who saved her, she asks her brother why. He won't step in and convince them. But Giselin just shrugs. He doesn't care. And even if he tried, no one would believe him anyway. Belinda, on the other hand, is absolutely furious, just thinking about how the real culprits were. Jamal and Phil, the ones who attempted to abduct Elena. Regardless, Giselin is just relieved that his sister is safe, and that he managed to prevent a war. But deep down, he knows those bastards won't stop so easily. He can't hold them off forever by himself. He desperately needs to start building his own military force. Just then, a maid enters, carrying his food. But instead of anything remotely appetizing, Giselin gets only a measly, dry piece of bread. Surprised, he immediately questions Belinda about it. She explains that this is all part of the fallout from all the recent chaos. Right then, a loud voice echoes through the halls. It's some fat merchant, loudly yelling for compensation, all because of the abruptly canceled festival. And it's not just him, either. There's a whole mob of furious merchants gathered outside, all demanding to be reimbursed for their crippling losses. Looking out the window, Giselin asks, "Who are they?" And Belinda gently reminds him that this country's economy relies heavily on these merchants and the massive profits from the festival. Last year, it was a massive success. But this year, it got canceled after just one day. No wonder they're absolutely furious. Only now does Giselin truly realize just how dire the financial situation has become. If he doesn't do something about this soon, things could spiral completely out of control. He tells Fergus to send out soldiers to calm the crowd. But Fergus calmly informs him that there are no soldiers available. Most of them have already been dispatched to the Forest of Monsters to help with reconstruction after the devastating orc raid. That just makes things even worse. Peridium is in a constant state of war. Barbarians to the north, monsters to the south. No money means no soldiers, which just piles onto his growing list of problems. Taking Belinda aside, he whispers that, since she's in charge of his finances, they need to find a way to settle these merchants down. But Belinda tells him straight, there's no money left. When he asks why, she reminds him that the Lord already cut off his funds because he kept spending so recklessly. The idea of being broke makes Giselin sick. He demands she lend him some cash. But she doesn't have any, either. Everything seems stacked against him. No money, no soldiers, and no way out, even with all his future knowledge. He's helpless without money to back it up. As he's deep in thought, Ricardo bursts into the room at top speed, panting hard and clearly alarmed. Giselin immediately demands to know what's happening. Ricardo, practically shouting, exclaims that there's a massive problem. Young Master Kane is demanding an audience with him. The mere mention of Kane's name catches Giselin completely off guard. That's when we see one of our own, Knight Commander Skovan, getting absolutely wrecked by Kane. Kane's insanely built physique and brute strength are pounding the poor knight's face like it's a ripe, mushy tomato. Every punch feels like a brutal sledgehammer blow. And clearly, Kane isn't holding back one bit. The final, crushing blow knocks Skovan out cold. Giselin arrives just in time to find his knight lying, beaten and bloodied on the ground. The look on Giselin's face says it all. He's absolutely furious. He turns to face his cousin, eyes blazing with pure rage. The bastard standing before him is absolutely massive, so huge that Giselin looks like a scrawny kid in comparison. And that wicked grin plastered on Kane's face only makes things even more intimidating. Beside Kane stands his escort knight, You see, Cain Logis, heir to the Logis County, is the very one with whom House Peridium once had an alliance. He used to be Gislin's only friend and his biggest rival. After knocking out the commander, Cain casually approaches Gislin. But Gislin doesn't flinch, calm and composed. He asks Ricardo to explain what exactly happened. Ricardo recounts that they were responding to a report of trouble at a tavern. That's where they encountered Cain and his escort knight. During the confrontation, Cain asked Commander Scovan if the rumors about Gislin were true. When Scovan explained the details, Cain suddenly grabbed him by the mouth, accusing him of muttering lies under his breath and refusing to tolerate anyone lying to the heir of Logis. At that point, Ricardo finishes his version of events. But then, Cain's escort knight dramatically steps forward. He cuts in, claiming Ricardo conveniently left out a crucial detail. He adds that Scovan had proudly boasted Gislin, of all people, a guy who barely trained a day in his life, had single-handedly taken down an orc, barehanded, and on top of that, he'd defeated the treacherous escort knights, all by himself. That's what really set Cain off. He figured Scovan was just spouting ridiculous lies, so he gave him a good beating as a much-needed reality check. Cain then smirks, proclaiming, none of this would have happened if Scovan hadn't spun such a ridiculous tale. Gislin doesn't utter a single word aloud, but internally his thoughts roar to life, and they're overflowing with pure, seething bitterness toward Cain. Once his subordinate, can always manage to stir up absolute chaos whenever he bothered to visit Peridium. And no matter how much destruction he caused, no one ever dared to confront him. Because he was conveniently allied with House Peridium, people always gave Cain undue deference. But Gislin? He was constantly scrutinized, criticized, and looked down upon. Meanwhile, Cain was lauded for his bold, confident nature, traits expected from a rightful heir. Gislin, however, was endlessly lambasted for not measuring up. Now, from Cain's own perspective, even he's genuinely taken aback by how calm Gislin is. Usually, Gislin would have already snapped and lunged at him by now. We then get a flashback to a recent pivotal moment in Logan's County. Cain had received a chilling order, assassinate Gislin. The person giving this command was a mysterious hooded man, someone who had recently botched a mission and faced severe repercussions from his superiors. This same enigmatic figure promised Cain that if he succeeded, the esteemed one would fully endorse the Logis family. Cain confidently boasted that defeating Gislin would be an absolute breeze. After all, Gislin was nothing more than a pathetic, weak brat, but there was one critical detail that gave him pause. Gislin was still the recognized heir, so outright killing him could cause major political fallout. The hooded man then proposed a clever solution: provoke Gislin into a public duel. Make it appear to be nothing more than a simple squabble between noble heirs, then tragically stage the whole incident as an unfortunate accident. And to ensure everything went off without a hitch, the hooded man himself offered to disguise himself as one of Cain's very own escort knights to help orchestrate the entire scheme, ensuring nothing could possibly go wrong. The prospect of eliminating his own cousin absolutely thrilled Cain, and he didn't hesitate to agree. Fast forward to today, Cain is trying to figure out why. There's a new order out to eliminate Gislin. He wonders if Gislin has perhaps changed recently, which could be the underlying reason. Still, Cain sticks to his original plan to provoke Gislin. He calls out, demanding why Gislin is just standing there. They're about to face off, so he better get things ready. Gislin, utterly confused, has no idea what arrangements Cain is referring to. Cain brings up how the festival has been disrupted and suggests they should really spice things up and have some fun. He also reminds Gislin how they've always been on the same page for these sorts of wild escapades. But Gislin barely reacts and vaguely asks if Cain is talking about alcohol. You see, this bastard used to make Gislin prepare booze and women every single time he showed up. Back then, Gislin went along with it just to avoid a beating, but not anymore. Because of Cain, he burned through a ton of Gislin's money, which is also why his father ended up cutting his allowance completely. Now Gislin has clearly figured out the root of his financial troubles once and for all, and he's certain Cain is the problem. and possibly the solution too. Meanwhile, Kane keeps pressing, demanding that Ghislaine bring him the goods immediately. Ghislaine, playing along, agrees, but says that first Kane needs to repay the money he owes. Kane can sense something has drastically changed. Ghislaine is giving off a completely different vibe now. Even Kane pauses, genuinely surprised, and seriously asks, what debts Ghislaine is even talking about? With a calm smile, Ghislaine explains that he's been the one personally managing all of Kane's requests, with his own money all this time, and now he wants at least 1,000 gold back, no less. Kane is stunned. To him, that's a ridiculous, astronomical number. He thought it should have cost no more than 100 gold at most. Besides, he believed Ghislaine was doing all that because they were friends, more like a friends with benefits arrangement. But Ghislaine never truly saw them as friends. He'd been this guy's doormat for far too long. And now, if Kane values his miserable life, he better pay up. Ghislaine desperately needs the cash and isn't letting Kane just walk away. Without paying his dues, the entire room falls silent, and even Ghislaine's own loyal knight, Ricardo, is sweating bullets after that audacious demand. Kane bolts upright from his seat, absolutely furious. He thinks Ghislaine's gotten way too cocky, probably thanks to the rumors swirling about him. To Kane, Ghislaine is still nothing but a leech, parasitically feeding off this land. Boiling with rage, he clenches his fist, poised to crush him on the spot. But even as the punch hurtles straight for him, Ghislaine doesn't even flinch. At the very last second, he subtly shifts, causing the punch to completely miss its mark. Shock ripples through the room. Kane swings again with full force, but Ghislaine swiftly ducks and drives a brutal open palm strike right into Kane's gut. The strike is so unbelievably powerful, it almost sends the brute coughing up blood. Kane tries to land another punch, but this time, Ghislaine instantly freezes his movements. Even though Kane doesn't suffer any actual damage, he dramatically acts like he's in agony. The hooded figure rushes over, appearing concerned, but it's immediately obvious Kane's pride is the only thing truly hurt. Ghislaine coolly tells him to cut the act. That wasn't even a true hit. But Kane stubbornly continues his victim act. Every single person in the pub is left absolutely stunned. Ghislaine, the so-called weakling, just took Kane down without even breaking a sweat. No one is sure how to react. Ghislaine, of course, knows this fraud is totally faking it, and he knows exactly what Kane's scheming to do. Kane then turns to his hooded knight and smugly asks if his little performance was satisfactory. The knight gives him credit. It was a masterful act. Kane had arranged everything perfectly to frame Ghislaine as the one responsible, just enough to warrant a formal duel.
1,299, 0 hours, 47 minutes and 27 seconds, 866, is greater than 0 hours, 47 minutes and 30 seconds, 166. Kane is chomping at the bit to use this opportunity.
If he helps the higher-ups get rid of Ghislaine, he'll earn their support, and it also gives him a chance to sever ties with the Peridium household. So he plays along. He dramatically pulls out a glove, spouting theatrical lines, ready to declare a duel. But before he can even toss his glove, Ghislaine beats him to the punch. He flings a glove straight at Kane's face, challenging him first. After all, Kane insulted the Peridium heir and assaulted his knight right in front of everyone. So now, Ghislaine demands a duel. Kane's face freezes, but only for a moment. Then he smirks, convinced. Ghislaine just signed his own death sentence by asking for the duel, but Ghislaine keeps that confident, sassy smile on his face. He then turns to Ricardo and tells him to gather all the merchants, protesting outside the castle. He wants them to witness something big because Ghislaine, the young master of the Peridium house, is about to make them some serious money. So the festival was suddenly canceled, and the electric atmosphere that had reached its peak suddenly fizzled out. This left a bunch of disappointed tourists stuck there, unable to leave or enjoy themselves. It was like a fire that never got to properly burn. In such a situation, if something exciting were to happen, it would be like a blessing for them. That's why, when Ghislaine steps into the ring to face that bastard, the crowd absolutely erupts in excitement. People are pouring in from distant places, and the market vendors who had been struggling finally start making some money from these stranded tourists. That chubby merchant, the one who led the protests earlier, now has a full setup with a betting table, letting people place their bets on the fighters. Most of them are betting on Cain loges, which makes sense. It seems like the safe option. Cain, the hulking brute, stands ready with his massive sword, prepared to begin. But he's clearly irritated that what was supposed to be a serious duel is now turning into some carnival spectacle. He makes it crystal clear up front. He's not holding back, not even if Ghislain surrenders. But Ghislain isn't fazed in the slightest. He can tell the bastard's true goal is to kill, surrender or not. And with the crowd now sizable enough, Ghislain officially kicks off the duel. Just then, a hooded figure interrupts, claiming the betting can't proceed like this. Everyone's confused until the hefty merchant explains. No one has bet on young Master Ghislain. The crowd begins to whisper. It's clear they've already written him off completely. They think he doesn't stand a chance, period. Ken even finds it hilarious, like, even the marketplace wants nothing to do with Ghislain. Because the bet is so incredibly one-sided, they decide to adjust the rules a bit, to make things a little fairer. That's when Commander Scoven steps up boldly, with a hefty bag of money, placing his bet on Ghislain. To everyone's shock, Lady Elena also brings out a bag, and bets on her own brother. While people might have expected Scoven's show of support, Elena's sudden appearance catches even Ghislain off guard, and the crowd is absolutely buzzing. She asks the merchant if that much money will suffice, and he respectfully replies, yes. Now that Ghislain finally has some backing, Ken begrudgingly agrees to start the duel, though he's clearly annoyed by how things are unfolding. The match begins, and Ghislain generously offers Cain the first strike, saying, essentially, since you're younger, Big Brother would love to give you the opening move. That cheap knockoff of the Hulk looks utterly confused by the gesture, but Ghislain confidently draws his sword and calls him out. Cain goes silent for a second, then takes the bait. He gets into position, charges forward like a raging bull, and slams down with his enormous blade. Their swords clash violently. Cain puts every ounce of his strength into the hit, but Ghislain doesn't even flinch. So Cain swings again, this time without thinking, and Ghislain dodges it with incredible ease. The brute jumps up for a wild kick, but again, Ghislain casually avoids it. After this lightning-fast back and forth, both fighters retreat briefly. Cain grins, that same creepy smile plastered across his face, clearly relishing every single moment. Ghislain can practically feel the arrogance radiating off him. Belinda is breaking out in a sweat, watching her young master go toe-to-toe with this absolute beast. She even desperately urges Lady Elena to stop her brother. Meanwhile, the hooded figure is practically radiating smugness, totally convinced Ghislain is utterly doomed. He believes Ghislain has already fallen right into the trap, the very moment he chose to fight Cain. In his mind, it was already over. Ghislain will be utterly overwhelmed by Cain's monstrous power. He won't find a single way to counter, and will burn out all his energy just trying to dodge. Eventually, Ghislain will slip up and be ruthlessly killed. That's precisely how Cain has crushed countless opponents. Pure, unadulterated brute strength. But this time, Ghislain is proving to be more than a match, dodging every single attack with insane, lightning-fast agility. Even Cain has to grudgingly admit that Ghislain has become a lot harder to pin down. His skills have truly improved. A frustrated Cain pushes his assault even harder. He brazenly grabs his blade by the sharp edge with his bare, unprotected hands and swings directly at Ghislain with devastating full force. Though Ghislain somehow manages to block the blow with his own sword. The brutal attack traps him tightly within Cain's crossguard. Then, using every ounce of his immense strength, Cain hurls Ghislain soaring high into the sky. Everyone is left utterly stunned, mouths agape in shock, watching the young master suspended helplessly in midair. The only person who seems utterly thrilled is that hooded figure. He's absolutely convinced Ghislain is completely done for. But he's about to get a very rude awakening, while still dangerously airborne. Gislin channels mana directly into his legs and instantly regains balance, landing gracefully, perfectly back on the ground. Initially, Gislin had been clearly holding back, but now that this arrogant jerk has pushed things way too far, he's absolutely done playing nice. In a flash, he dashes toward Kane with truly godlike speed and zips right past him. The hooded guy can't believe his eyes. Gislin managed to land completely unharmed, all thanks to mana in his legs. To Gislin, this oversized brute is truly nothing but a clueless, arrogant swordsman. Probably just someone who assumed he was utterly unbeatable, just because people got intimidated by merely a glimpse of his strength. But Gislin's here to absolutely crush that pathetic delusion and prove that brute strength isn't always enough. Feeling utterly mocked, Kane charges again, demanding how Gislin plans to prove it. Gislin plants his feet, kicks up his sword's hilt, then leaps into the air, raining down multiple strikes. Kane bravely fights back with his own blade, but Gislin quickly sidesteps him, even stepping right on Kane's sword. Catching him off guard, the brute is briefly disarmed. Gislin seizes the opening and slashes him. After that intense exchange, Gislin comes to a sudden halt. While Kane starts bleeding, from every spot Gislin struck, the crowd is absolutely speechless. Pure shock and awe ripple through them as they realize just how far Gislin has come. Whispers turn into panic. Could he actually win this? Elena, proud and confident, tells Belinda her earlier fear was unnecessary. Commander Scoven watches with pride at this incredible display, but the hooded man is drenched in sweat. He notices the wounds Gislin inflicted are shallow. Gislin could have gone deeper, but chose not to. That alone tells him Gislin is in full control. Kane, on the other hand, feels utterly humiliated, witnessing such divine swordsmanship. Gislin now turns to the defeated Kane and dramatically throws away his sword. He doesn't plan to use it anymore. He thinks the gap in their skill is so massive that weapons aren't even needed. He's going to finish this with his bare hands. That much disrespect is enough to make Kane's blood boil. Gislin is ready to teach him a brutal lesson. With his fists, since the big guys, strength lies in hand-to-hand combat. Gislin decides to handicap himself and fight in his opponent's preferred style. And to make things even more interesting, he now bets 2,000 gold, double the original amount. The crowd is in utter disbelief, hearing such a high wager for a barehanded match, especially when it was supposed to be a sword duel. Meanwhile, the hooded man is practically melting, watching Gislin fearlessly challenge Kane. Without a weapon, he never thought he'd see the day. Yet, a part of him still clings to the idea Kane could win. The portly merchant swiftly declares the fight is now officially a bare-knuckle brawl and urges everyone to place their new bets. This time, more people are siding with Gislin, realizing that brute strength alone won't guarantee victory. Kane, still brimming with arrogance, accepts the challenge, but outright refuses to drop his sword. He plans to use it against Gislin anyway. Belinda utterly panics and frantically pleads with Gislin to pick up his sword again, but the hulking brute already starts swinging. And Gislin, calm and utterly collected, completely unfazed by the chaos, is ready to knock some sense into this oversized fool. The moment that colossal sword came crashing down, Gislin swiftly ducked out of the way. So fast his afterimage seemed to lag behind, he struck hard at the opponent's massive leg, immediately following it up with a brutal uppercut straight to the chin. Blood gushed from Kane's face. That single blow was enough to rattle his very brain and send one of his knees crashing to the ground. It was unreal. Kane hadn't even seen the hits coming. The audience was utterly stunned, just like Kane, absolutely loving the unexpected twist this fight had taken. Meanwhile, Gislin radiated pure confidence and undeniable charm, claiming he hadn't even gotten serious yet and still wanted to have more fun. This bruised the fatty's delicate ego, making him grit his teeth in frustration before charging at Gislin once more. But our boy danced around him effortlessly, dodging every single strike with breathtaking grace. The fight choreography was absolutely next level, even as the narrator It was hard to keep up with Gislin's godlike, lightning-fast moves, no matter what Kane desperately tried. Every single attack was met with a swift counter, and an even stronger, more devastating hit. Blow after relentless blow rained down on him, as Kane reeled from the agonizing pain. He found himself thinking back, remembering how Gislin once couldn't even meet his gaze, always bowing low whenever Kane made an appearance. But now that dynamic had completely flipped on its head. Kane kept getting absolutely hammered, reduced to nothing more than a mere training dummy. His whole body was now a canvas of blossoming bruises. His face was so utterly bashed in, not even his own mother would recognize him. At one point, Gislin grabbed Kane by the hair. Gazing at this stubborn, broken mess of a man, he couldn't help but feel a pang of pity. Not for Kane, but for his loyal family. Count Loges had stood by House Peridium with unwavering loyalty, even as it crumbled, simply because he was a close friend of Gislin's father. But Kane was nothing like his old man. The scene briefly shifted to the past. There, Kane was seen shouting at his father, furious about his endless support for House Peridium. He thought his father was just throwing away valuable resources on a dying cause. It hadn't even been a week since Count Loges came back home yet. He was already preparing to leave again for Peridium. Kane had begged him not to go, his frustration boiling over at what he saw as blind loyalty. But the Count responded gently, yet firmly. He was doing it because they were friends. That was the only reason. Back in the present, Gislin balled up his fist. Everyone expected another brutal punch. But instead, he reached out with a hand of friendship. It shocked everyone. No one had expected this gesture, least of all Kane. But to everyone's surprise, Kane accepted it and admitted defeat. The crowd was floored. Kane conceding the match left everyone speechless. The referee wasted no time in declaring Gislin the winner. Members of House Peridium were thrilled, watching their young master shine, while Elena was especially joyful to see her brother finally claim victory. But then, a hooded man stormed over to the defeated Kane and began scolding him. He couldn't believe Kane gave up so quickly just because things weren't going his way. Kane didn't argue. He simply turned his face away and said he was done with the game. Since Kane failed to take Gislin down, the hooded guy started stressing about how he'd explain this to his seniors. Just then, our boy made another move. This time, with a mischievous grin, Gislin shouted loud enough for everyone to hear that the hooded man right here had generously volunteered to cover the cost of all the food and drinks for the entire crowd. The hooded guy absolutely flipped out, completely blindsided by this sudden announcement. But the crowd? They went utterly wild, ecstatic at the thought of free food and booze. The hooded man immediately protested, yelling that he never agreed to any of this, and demanded Gislin take it back. But our guy just smiled, cool as you please, placed a firm hand on the man's shoulder, and told him this was the price of defeat. And no, this wasn't coming out of their existing bet. He told him to add another 2,000 gold, on top of the original 1,000. If he dared to run, there'd be serious consequences. And when Gislin said that, he wasn't joking. The raw threat in his words burned straight into the man's memory, leaving behind the image of someone absolutely not to be messed with. The very next day, in Gislin's room, we find Gislin staring at a treasure chest full of glittering gold coins. The amount of money he has is actually pretty huge. To give you an idea of just how much that is, you could easily hire a small mercenary corps with this amount of money. But it takes a lot of time to grow money. And those bastards who want him killed won't wait for his forces to grow. So, he only has a limited amount of time to execute the ambitious business plan he has in mind. That's when Belinda and his sister walk up to him, with satisfied smiles plastered on their faces. The way they're looking at him, it feels like they have some ulterior motive, hidden just behind those smiles. He quickly questions why they're even here, to which his little sister politely asks where he plans to spend all this money. Of course, Gislin immediately catches on to what she's implying, so he directly asks her if she wants some, to which the lady responds that she's just asking. Belinda then speaks up, stating that she has a pretty good idea of where he's going to spend it all. She's sure of that. With Lady Amelia's birthday just around the corner, Ghislain must be cooking up something truly grand to snag his fiancée an extravagant gift. But we all know our boy isn't even thinking about that. Not remotely. However, the mere mention of a fiancée completely blindsides Ghislain. He literally can't even remember. If he has a fiancée, the maid chuckles softly, assuming he's just being shy. They know he's playing dumb. Embarrassed, they've caught him red-handed. Still, since Elena notices her brother's been quite absent-minded lately, she decides to jog his memory. They're talking about Amelia. Of Rayford County, of course. Finally, the name sparks some memories in Ghislain's mind. But they're definitely not warm and fuzzy ones. You see, Amelia Rayford is widely respected as a noble among nobles, famed for her kindness and selflessness in her region. She's deeply loved by people from all walks of life. But Ghislain sees a very different version of her. In his eyes, she's no noble heroine. She's a traitor. Why? Because this very Amelia, once seen as the ideal noblewoman, would eventually ignite a rebellion. She'd earned the infamous title, the Witch of the North, after siding with the Delphine Duchy, to deal the final blow that led to Peridium's downfall. To Ghislain, she's no gentle fiancée. She's the very person who betrayed everything his family stood for. He then turns to Belinda and asks when his father will return. Belinda guesses maybe in a week. That's good enough for Ghislain. With a full week available, he decides to visit Rayford County. Belinda seems puzzled. After all, it's not even Amelia's birthday yet. So why is he leaving now? But Ghislain just says he plans to collect some money from them. Then we finally see Amelia Rayford herself. At first glance, she looks utterly expressionless, maybe even dead inside, but it's hard not to notice her. Other prominent features. She's currently in a town, offering a pair of sandals to a poor little girl. Turns out, they're her very own sandals. The little girl pauses, uncertain if she should accept them. But Amelia swiftly reassures her, stating if anyone should walk barefoot on her land, it ought to be her. She then commands her soldiers to give the girl and her family immediate food and shelter. The soldiers spring into action, and as Amelia walks away, her soldiers in tow, the townspeople call out their heartfelt thanks. Later, in the lush gardens of Rayford County, we see a man washing Amelia's feet with such devotion. It's enough to make you genuinely jealous. He's clearly so proud of her accomplishments. This man? It's Bernaf, Amelia's escort knight. She tells him that. While her father ruled with strict obedience, the common people follow whoever feeds and shelters them. Bernaf remarks that by doing this, she's won the people's hearts, something that will aid her in the upcoming succession battle. But Amelia doesn't seem too interested in that. Instead, she casually places her foot right over his face, in a playfully dominant, teasing manner, and asks how his duel went, against the best swordsman in the north. He apologizes, explaining that he deliberately lost, to avoid drawing unwanted attention. If he had won, people would have started noticing her. It's not yet time to reveal her power. He then kisses her feet with deep loyalty, swearing his full support. Amelia sees this as natural. After all, she's the one who raised him, and she has no intention of letting him stay weak. She then starts questioning him about the merchants. Bernaf assures her there's nothing to worry about when it comes to the Archaea Merchant Guild. All the materials needed for rebuilding the Forest of Beast Outpost, which was half destroyed during the recent orc attack in Peridium, are being bought through her guild. In short, her merchants are reclaiming every bit of support, money that Count Rayford sends to Peridium every year. On top of that, they're also recruiting knights and soldiers who are leaving Peridium, many of them experienced warriors, forged in battle against barbarian tribes. And so far, her scheme to bleed Peridium dry is flawless. She's pleased to hear it, just as she predicted. She instructs Bernaf to maintain appearances, making everything look like an ordinary merchant guild, and to be utterly discreet. Their true identity must remain concealed until they've amassed sufficient power. Just then, her butler appears. Bernaf is clearly annoyed that he entered the garden without permission, but the butler quickly relays urgent news. From the castle gates, young Lord Ghislain Peridium has arrived. Although he's supposed to be her fiancé, Amelia doesn't appear remotely pleased. At the mention of his name, she coldly asks the butler why Ghislain is here, and the man starts sweating as he reveals the reason. He's going to talk about the Merchant Guild. Both Amelia and Bernaf freeze in absolute shock when they hear this. We then find ourselves in the visitor's room, where she's seated across from our boy, Ghislain. He tries to keep things cool, greeting her with his usual laid-back tone, but she's clearly not having it. Her face twists with contempt. She's furious he showed up unannounced, assuming he still hasn't learned the basics of etiquette. Ghislain casually reminds her that her birthday is coming up, so he thought he'd drop by early with a gift. He places a flower on the table and explains he got it from a nearby merchant guild, saying it smells nice and that he might start buying flowers from there regularly. If he remembers correctly, the guild's name is Arkham. Of course, she instantly figures out what he's getting at, but pretends she has no clue. She accepts the flower, says she'll be on her way, and starts to leave. That's when Ghislain calls her name, his voice now serious, asking her to sit. She immediately feels the pressure emanating from him, heavy, intense. But what shakes her the most, and get this, it's coming from the very same guy who used to freeze up and barely utter a word around her. Ghislain doesn't waste a second, cutting straight to the chase. His demand? A cool 10,000 gold coins. Naturally, she's less than thrilled by this demand, especially not from her so-called fiancé, who just barged in here like this. She wonders if his father put him up to this. But Ghislain quickly sets the record straight. His father has absolutely nothing to do with this. Besides, he knows she's not planning to marry him anyway. He suspects her true aim is the lordship of the land, and given her secret preparations, she's got a real shot. But he also warns her, if word about her power moves leaks out in Rayford, she could lose her shot at succession entirely. That hits a nerve. She glares at him, dead serious, warning him not to even joke about that. Not even as a joke. Ghislain calmly assures her he'll keep her secret for now, but he hints that might change if he walks out empty-handed. Still, she remains sharp and sassy. She's already figured out exactly how to deal with him. She calls out to her knight, Bernaf, and a loyal feet-licker quickly walks in, bowing politely to Lord Ghislain. Meanwhile, in Ghislain's thoughts, we find out this knight has always been by Amelia's side. The guy isn't just loyal, he's incredibly skilled, enough to rival the strongest swordsman in the north. Sensing the coming storm, Ghislain warns her, if she tries to kill him here, it could spark a war. Does she really have time for that? With the succession ceremony so close? But Amelia already has a plan up her sleeve. Her excuse? A random intruder burst in, caused trouble, and her escort knight handled it. That's the story the world will hear. Without hesitation, she orders her knight to kill him. And Bernaf, he's all too eager to obey. Sword drawn, ready to strike. But Ghislain's not about to roll over and die that easily. If that's how she wants to play it, then he's ready to get serious too. The stage is all set for another divine-level showdown between these two skilled warriors. So grab your parrots. So buckle up because things are about to get wild. But just when we were hoping for a proper, no-holds-barred showdown between two men of honor, this cowardly knight pulls a sneaky, underhanded trick out of nowhere. Ghislain hears a faint rustling behind him, and before he can even fully react, an assassin leaps out from an empty suit of armor, trying to stab straight through the sofa and pin him down. But this dumbass is just way too slow. Ghislain rolls to the ground like a goddamn ninja, kicks the bastard square in the chest, and launches him right out the damn window. The lady and her little lapdog just stand there, like absolute stunned idiots. They never expected him to react so quickly and with such grace. Ghislain doesn't hold back his disgust, calling out that two-faced bitch for acting all polite, all while setting up a damn ambush. Wasting no time, he lunges at the knight, and their swords clash. Ghislain mocks him, asking if Rayfald forgot what chivalry means. The knight offers a quick apology, but fires back, saying, Ghislain was the one who barged in uninvited and threw around nothing but weak threats, and disturbing the lady. The two go at each other fiercely, both trying to land a clean hit. But it's obvious our boy has the edge. His reflexes are on point. He even lands a solid kick. That sends the knight stumbling back. The knight clearly underestimated him, assuming he was all talk with no skill. But now he's realizing the harsh truth. Ghislain is anything but a novice. Meanwhile, Amelia is absolutely fuming as she watches her knight getting pushed around by someone she once considered a lowly thug. She orders him in a chilling tone to stop playing around and bring her Ghislain's head if he truly wants to call himself a knight. Fired up by his mistress's command, the knight finally starts taking the fight seriously. Now, it's about her honor, and he won't let her down. He confidently challenges Ghislain to come at him. Ghislain, wearing a cocky grin, taunts the guy for acting all bossy. Well, he's nothing more than a mere escort knight. But since this fool is practically begging for it, Ghislain is more than happy to deliver a beatdown. They clash again, this time with explosive, full force. The knight stops holding back any longer, and even manages to land a cut right on Ghislain's face with one sharp strike. Their movements are so lightning fast, it's nearly impossible to keep track of them. Only blurred after-images linger in their wake. Amelia, now even more restless than before, can't believe what she's witnessing unfold. This guy was supposed to be just a punk, yet he's keeping up with her elite knight, Bernaf. This fight is absolutely brutal to watch. Every time Ghislain goes in for a hit, the knight dodges. Every time the knight strikes, Ghislain dodges back. The brutal cycle continues, blow after blow. Ghislain tries to pull the same move he used earlier, but this time he gets slammed hard to the ground. Sensing a critical opening, the knight charges forward, sword ready, but Ghislain recovers just in time, flipping and twisting midair with agility before landing squarely back on his feet. By now, Ghislain has realized that the knight is using mana to absorb his every attack. Meanwhile, the knight himself starts to see that Ghislain isn't anything like the rumors claimed he would be. His swordsmanship doesn't seem formally trained at all. It feels more like a style forged through real, brutal experience in battle. The knight even wonders if Ghislain has fought barbarians so often that he adopted their chaotic combat style. He admits it might work in a messy battlefield, but insists it won't work against him personally. Now, determined to end the fight, the knight steps up his offense dramatically. Ghislain, though, knows this isn't going to be an easy win. The knight's sharp, precise strikes aimed at his head are throwing off his sense of distance and rhythm. And on top of that, the sheer size difference between them at such close range makes it hard to overpower him through technique alone. Truth be told, Ghislain should have never picked a fight with this guy in the first place. It's like facing the final boss with nothing but beginner gear. But hey, he didn't exactly have the luxury to gear up properly beforehand, so he decides to stop holding back. He conjures a shimmering mana thread that zips right past the knight's ear, catching him completely off guard in that split second. Ghislain then draws a hidden sword and smacks the knight hard across the back of his head. He follows up with a brutal kick straight to the face. Bernaf is left dazed from the double hit, leaving the spider lady in utter, speechless shock. Then Ghislain leaps into the air and comes crashing down. But before he can even land a blow, the knight uses his raw body strength to hurl him away. With a powerful shove, Bernard urgently tells his mistress to flee right away. He can't promise her safety any longer if things continue to escalate like this. From here on, he vows to give everything he's got, but he warns her that staying might get her caught directly in the chaos. Ghislain, on the other hand, is absolutely fired up. He hasn't had such an exciting opponent in a very long while. Meanwhile, Amelia is sprinting frantically down the corridor, clutching her cat, visibly shaken. She's absolutely furious. How dare that guy humiliate her like this? And who the hell leaked information about the merchant guild to him? To Ghislain. There's no way he could have known all that. Unless someone helped him, of course. All those wild rumors about him killing orcs, defending his little sister from assassins, even beating the heir of Logis. She used to think it was just pure luck, or overblown nonsense, but now she's being forced to admit that maybe he really has gotten stronger. As she runs, she suddenly notices something odd. Not a single guard is around. That just ticks her off even more. But soon, she sees exactly why. All the soldiers are down. sprawled out across the cold floor. And the one responsible? None other than Belinda. Amelia freezes, utterly stunned to see peridiums made here. But before she can even react, Belinda suddenly places a dagger to her throat. That's when Belinda suddenly notices a spider, dangling eerily near Amelia's face. She snatches the little creature with a look of clear disgust, and loudly complains about the damn thing. Then Belinda brings up a memory. She remembers the day of the engagement ceremony, when she overheard a conversation between Count Rayfeld and the Lord of Peridium, apparently. Amelia's siblings used to bully her for always being surrounded by creepy spiders. So Amelia had started raising them herself, and took revenge. Belinda isn't sure whether that was a way for Amelia to deal with trauma, or just her asserting herself. She then apologizes if her words sound harsh, but says flatly it doesn't suit Amelia. With that, she crushes the spider under her foot. After stomping it mercilessly, Belinda asks Amelia rather coldly to cooperate a little. But before we get to hear what exactly Belinda wants, the scene shifts back to the boys' fight, and things have escalated. The night is now radiating a terrifyingly dark energy, and the air is so thick with mana that even Ghislain is beginning to feel nervous. The knight is clearly pissed off. He's furious that Ghislain had the nerve to call him an entertaining opponent like some low-rank mercenary. He hates that someone he considers a lowly, unserious fool would dare claim to be a noble or stand on the same level as Amelia. But of course Ghislain is a noble, and he doesn't think an escort knight like Bernaf has any right to speak down to him. Bernaf makes the first move, and they begin clashing swords. He's seething, convinced Ghislain is mocking noble pride. His attacks are relentless, blow after blow, while Ghislain holds his ground, impressed by the sheer power and aggression. But Ghislain has reached his limit too. He fights back with just as much fury. The knight isn't holding anything back now. In one heavy strike, he knocks Ghislain off balance, and immediately follows up with a stab, aimed for a critical blow. Tom seems to stop as that blade slices through the air, and blood splatters when it grazes Ghislain's shoulder. Bernaf is stunned. Ghislain willingly took the hit to the shoulder, just to deflect the attack, using the injury as leverage. Ghislain shoves Bernaf back, but it's not enough. But Bernaf quickly counters with a vicious kick of his own. He then mocks Ghislain, sneering. This is the difference between a true warrior and some brat who treats swordplay like a game. The powerful kick sends Ghislain flying through the air, but it's still not enough to take him down for good. In fact, Ghislain still looks completely amused. The knight's blistering speed, formidable range, and relentless attacks keep him in total control of the battle so far. Any attempt Ghislain makes to get in close or grapple is instantly shut down by Bernaf. Now, locked in a brutal blade clash, their weapons are pressed tight against each other. It looks like Ghislain doesn't have the raw strength to break free with his current mana, but he's playing the long game here. He knows the knight hasn't seen it yet. The trump card he's been saving all along. Ghislain's unique mana cultivation technique is still hidden, but in a flash. Ghislain activates his third core, completely tipping the scales of the battle. With just one devastating blow, he effortlessly disarms the knight, sending his sword flying and leaving Bernaf utterly stunned. Bernaf can only gape, wondering how this guy is able to wield such overwhelming mana during combat. Now that Bernaf is completely vulnerable, Ghislain presses his blade to the knight's head, freezing him in place. Just then, Belinda storms in, dragging a terrified Amelia along. The once arrogant noblewoman is now a complete mess, crying hysterically, and quickly agreeing to hand over the 10,000 gold. She begs them to just leave and never come back, though Ghislain is satisfied he got what he came for. There's still a tinge of annoyance in his expression. It didn't have to go this far, after all. Things would have been so much simpler if Amelia had just cooperated from the beginning. Regardless, he pulls back his sword and turns to Amelia to drop another bombshell. The price is now doubled. It's 20,000 gold. In the aftermath, Amelia's palace is in total disarray. Furious, she's flinging things in utter frustration. Not only did her knight lose miserably, but now she's stuck paying twice as much. The knight tries to apologize, admitting Gislin turned out far stronger than any rumors implied. He takes full responsibility, stating, it was his failure to properly evaluate his opponent. Gislin's mana output had far exceeded what even an elite knight should be capable of. That only makes Amelia angrier. When Bernaf suggests reporting the incident to Duke Delphine, she completely loses it and slaps him, grabbing him by the collar. She lashes out, because what he's saying isn't even an option. She's clearly scared out of her mind. If the Duke finds out what happened today, she's finished. The truth is, Amelia had formed a secret alliance with Duke Delphine without her father's knowledge. In return for his support in her rebellion, she promised to help him take down Peridium. If this alliance is exposed, her own siblings would kill her. And if Gislin knows about the merchant guild's hidden secrets, he might already be aware of her deal with the Duke too, which means one thing: he has to be eliminated. She's willing to go to any length to make that happen. The knight agrees with her line of thinking. She then asks about Gislin's condition. The knight explains that, although he managed to injure Gislin in several places, the worst damage is on his shoulder. Plus, with how much mana he burned in the fight, Gislin won't be in peak shape for a while. But since they plan to eliminate him without leaving a trace, they can't afford to use any knights from their own territory. Amelia anticipated this and had already made arrangements. She had secretly trained a different group of knights for exactly this kind of situation. Even Bernaf wasn't aware of them. She reminds him about the Wildcats, a unit made up of war orphans, people with no rank or nation, only raw talent. These Wildcats are elite mercenaries, often referred to as traffickers due to their brutal efficiency. She gives Bernaf a map with a marked location and instructs him to gather around a dozen men, but only those with exceptional mana control. Branagh quickly realizes the chosen location makes perfect tactical sense. It's a narrow ravine, the sole passage between rolled territory and Peridium. Remote and constricted, it's an ideal ambush point where they can handle things discreetly without wasting any time. Branagh immediately sets out to put the plan in motion. Meanwhile, Amelia is absolutely hell-bent on making Gislin pay for publicly humiliating her. Gislin, on the other hand, had already departed Amelia's palace and was riding comfortably inside his carriage. As they traveled, he carefully bandaged his injured body. Old man Fergus and Belinda were with him, both looking concerned as they asked if he was all right. Gislin reassured them that his wounds weren't too deep, and honestly, things could have been much worse, especially considering how hard he had pushed himself. Still, what truly mattered most to him was that the 20,000 gold he'd gotten from Amelia was more than enough to fund the initial steps to rebuild their territory. That kind of money was equivalent to saving several years' worth of hard work. Sure, it would have been ideal if he could have killed Amelia, too, but doing that would have definitely triggered a war, something he absolutely couldn't afford. Wislan's safety was on the line. Peridium was already struggling to deal with the barbarians, so he chose to retreat quietly, rather than make things even worse. Besides just knowing the secret behind the Archmage Merchant Guild was already a major blow to Amelia. Belinda watched him with worried eyes and asked if everything was going according to his plan. She remembered his earlier instructions to subdue the guards if she heard fighting, and to take Amelia hostage. Once she stepped outside, Gislin confirmed that yes, those were his exact words. Just then, he felt a sharp pain and coughed up blood. It was the backlash from unlocking his third core, though his condition was better than the last time. Such intense reactions, every time he used his powers, were simply unsustainable. He desperately needed a faster way to restore his mana. Belinda swiftly seized his hand, noticing the chaotic energy flow disrupting his body. Without a moment's hesitation, she pulled out a needle and expertly pierced the back of his hand with lightning-fast precision. Strangely, Gislin found the process incredibly calming. When she finished, he exhaled a long, steady breath, feeling a profound sense of relief. His tangled mana pathways had begun to rapidly clear. What amazed him even more was the sheer skill of Belinda's technique. This wasn't something just anyone could achieve. It required a deep, innate understanding of mana. It made sense, considering it was his mother, who had brought Belinda into the palace. But even then, Ghislaine couldn't quite figure out why. Someone with her exceptional level of ability was serving as a head maid in the countryside. Still, having such skilled allies nearby was undeniably a good thing, especially since the enemies they'd faced so far were likely just the beginning. Belinda, sensing his unspoken thoughts, reassured him of her unwavering support, no matter what. But she demanded to know what he planned to do with such an exorbitant sum of money from Lady Amelia. Ghislaine casually replied he simply needed to spend money, and since Amelia was the only wealthy person he knew, he decided to simply take advantage of her. Both Fergus and Belinda were utterly stunned. Was he seriously saying he ended his engagement just for the money? And now, once Count Rayford heard about this, there'd be grave consequences. That only made Ghislaine smile. He jokingly asked Belinda if she truly trusted him. She barely managed to hide her irritation. She had just told him she trusted him unconditionally, and now he was asking again if she truly trusted him still. He should at least tell her what he intended to do with all that gold. Ghislaine answered with a single cryptic phrase, "The Forest of Beasts." That left Belinda utterly speechless. Ghislaine. He then revealed his plan to use the money to develop the perilous Forest of Beasts. Fergus nearly jumped out of his skin, utterly shocked. That forest had thwarted countless development attempts since the days of Ghislaine's great-grandfather. Ghislaine then reminded the old man about his earlier request. Fergus finally caught on to what Ghislaine was hinting at, but he hesitated, unsure how to reply. Eventually, he admitted that the person Ghislaine was asking about was indeed at the very location he'd mentioned. However, he wasn't convinced visiting them was a good idea. Still, Ghislaine's mind was made up. No matter what, he was going to meet that person. Belinda, however, firmly disagreed. She insisted they return home, especially considering his current condition. Ghislaine acknowledged her concern, but then brought up a harsh truth. Did she truly believe Amelia would let them off so easily after everything that had transpired? Knowing Amelia's personality, he was certain she'd try to kill him, just to protect her secret alliance with Duke Delphine from ever getting out. Belinda proudly flexed her slender arms, confidently assuring her young master that she could easily handle anyone who dared to stand in their way. She even reminded him they had old man Fergus as their knight. Though Ghislaine trusted Belinda and knew she was dependable, he also knew that wasn't the role she was meant to play. What he truly needed was a proper vanguard, and they were on their way to meet him. Later, they arrived at a secluded place with only a single shack in sight. The carriage driver knocked on the door, but there was no response. It felt as if the place was completely abandoned. Still, Fergus confirmed this was the exact address they'd been given. Eventually, someone did answer. A man whose entire face was buried under a thick, wild beard. He immediately demanded to know who they were. Everyone felt uneasy around this strange man, but Ghislaine remained completely unfazed. Belinda even whispered could this truly be the man they've been searching for? He certainly doesn't look like a fighter, let alone someone who could survive what's coming. But Ghislaine, radiating full confidence, reassures her. This is the man. The old man narrows his eyes at Ghislaine. He bluntly tells him to stop wasting his time and just leave. That's when Ghislaine calls him by his true title. Gillian, the former captain of the legendary Regresses mercenaries. At the mere mention of that name, the old man's expression noticeably shifts. As he turns, Ghislaine warmly reaches out his hand, inviting him to join their group. Both the old man and the carriage driver are utterly stunned by the name drop. You see, the Regresses mercenaries were once a legendary group, comprised only of master warriors, skilled with almost every single weapon. Though the group no longer exists, their reputation is so incredibly massive that even knights from faraway lands have heard their name. At least once. And Gillian? He was their captain. That's who Ghislaine has traveled all this way to find, without a moment's warning. The old man hurls his axe straight at Ghislaine, but Ghislaine doesn't even flinch, simply tilting his head slightly. letting the axe zip harmlessly past him. Instantly, the others jump into action, surrounding their young master in defensive stances, ready for a fight. But Jillian isn't here to play games. He bluntly demands to know why Ghislain is here. Belinda steps forward, thinking this guy is completely insane. But Ghislain simply says one thing: eternal punishment. He goes on to claim he knows the cure for the disease Jillian's daughter is suffering from. That alone is enough to catch Jillian's undivided attention. His daughter's condition causes a constant high fever, frequent blood coughing, and red rashes that bloom across her skin like flower petals. The agonizing pain she endures, almost like a prisoner under torture, is the very reason this incurable disease was named eternal punishment. At last, we finally see the girl everyone's been talking about. She's screaming in agony, her voice echoing, with Jillian bursting into the shack to aid his daughter. Rachel Ghislain immediately senses it's not too late to save her. In his past life, he had actually sought out Jillian, hoping to recruit him, but the man tragically ended his own life shortly after Rachel's death. Just by glancing at this house's state, it's clear Jillian spent everything he owned, desperately trying to save his daughter. Now, all he has left are his weapons. The girl, clearly in unbearable agony, begs her father to make it stop. Seeing her like that, Ghislain doesn't waste another second. He informs Jillian he's beginning the treatment immediately, but just as he's about to proceed, Belinda halts him. She doesn't understand what he's attempting to do. This illness isn't something brute force can cure. Even priests have failed. They even called it a punishment from the gods. She seriously doubts Ghislain can do anything, but Ghislain simply shrugs off her hand and makes it clear he can cure her. And if Belinda truly trusts him like she claimed, she'd better prove it now. That effectively silences her. He hands her a paper listing all the herbs they need and tells her to go acquire them. When Belinda sees the list, she's stunned. The reason? For Ghislain, as a wandering mercenary, survival often depends on knowledge. The illness, eternal punishment, may not be curable now, but a cure will be discovered in the future. It even became a hot topic back then, especially because the treatment turned out to be surprisingly simple. That's why Ghislain remembers it so well. The only issue, the ingredients are crazy expensive, one of them being a rare herb called Fairy's Blessing. Now that he has the Fairy's Blessing and the rest of the herbs, he gets to work. He chops them up, packs them tightly in a bottle, and pours distilled alcohol over the mix. After shaking it thoroughly and letting it sit, he adds the remaining ingredients, stirs it all together, and prepares the final potion. The remedy is complete. He hands it to Jillian and tells him to make Rachel drink it. With absolutely no hesitation, Jillian quickly pours the medicine into his daughter's mouth. The moment it reaches her stomach, the effects immediately kick in. Her bruised and reddened skin begins to heal, and slowly her body returns to normal, leaving everyone absolutely stunned. No one, not even Jillian, expected it to work, but Ghislain already knew it would. Jillian stares at him in disbelief, asking how he managed to cure her, when even divine power had utterly failed. Ghislain explains that priest powers aren't absolute. They can boost a body's vitality and help it recover faster, but that's not the same as actually curing an illness from its root. Trembling, Jillian reaches for Ghislain and asks, is she really going to be okay? Ghislain gives him the answer he's been desperate to hear. It'll take a couple of months, but she'll make a full recovery. Jillian's eyes widen. Despite being a strong, towering man, he drops to his knees, bows his head, and humbly asks what Ghislain wants in return. Surely, he must have come for something, but Jillian admits he has nothing to offer but his aging body. If Ghislain wants a servant, he'll obey every order like a dog. But Ghislain makes it clear he doesn't want a slave. What he wants is Jillian, the captain of the Regresses mercenaries. Hearing that, Jillian looks up, and what he sees stuns him. The same eyes filled with dreams. Without wasting another moment, he stands tall, grabs his axe, and chops off his long ponytail. Now, he looks like a true warrior, a massive, confident figure radiating strength. He asks if anyone besides Ghislain's group has been here. Ghislain tells him it's just him and his 3 companions. Jillian then asks if anyone holds a grudge against him. Ghislain replies with full confidence, "Yes, and there'll be more in the future." With that, Jillian grabs his harpoon. Infusing it with mana, he hurls it with godlike speed, straight through his hut and deep into the forest. Moments later, he reels it back in and stuck on its barbs. As a man who was spying, now caught like prey, Jillian seizes the intruder with his massive hand, his grip as firm as a vice, and demands to know who sent him. But the spy seems more curious about how Jillian even knew he was hiding in the woods. Turning to Ghislain, Jillian asks what he wants to do with the captured man. Calmly, Ghislain states he already knows who sent him, but he'd rather not sully his blade on a day like this. Still, he admits, it seems unavoidable. Just then, Jillian stops him from drawing his sword and promises to deal with the intruder himself. With that, Jillian tightens his colossal grip, and the spy's screams ring out through the forest. Once it's over, the mercenary respectfully bows to his master. Meanwhile, Belinda is clearly disturbed. After witnessing Jillian kill so effortlessly, without hesitation, she's left completely shaken, unable to understand why Ghislain would recruit someone so dangerous. The big guy, however, drops to his knees and pledges his life to Ghislain. In return, Ghislain gives him a confident smile, clearly pleased to have him on his side. The scene shifts to a solitary hut in the middle of a swamp, where the wildcat traffickers are in complete disarray. After hearing that their reconnaissance unit has been wiped out, senior member Virgo, captain of the squad, urges everyone to calm down. He remarks that based on Bernaf's intel, Ghislain shouldn't have even been able to locate the unit, let alone eliminate them. He questions whether the unit was incompetent, or if the intel was flawed. Just then, the reporter mentions that Jillian has joined Ghislain's group. Enraged, Virgo grabs the reporter by the throat and demands confirmation. Barely able to breathe, the reporter affirms that he saw it with his own eyes. Virgo is stunned by the news. He never thought Jillian would return to killing. Turns out, Virgo was also a member of the Regresses mercenaries, the very same group Jillian once belonged to. Meanwhile, back with our party, Jillian is now driving the carriage. Inside, Belinda feels utterly suffocated by the sheer number of weapons crammed into the space. She wonders if it was truly necessary for Jillian to bring so many. Couldn't a sword or 2 have sufficed? She even questions whether he might be some kind of arms dealer. In the other carriage, Fergus and Ricardo serve as the rear guard, keeping a watchful eye from behind. Giselle tries to remind Belinda that Jillian will definitely put those weapons to good use, so she'll just have to endure it. For now, their top priority is escaping the rift safely. Belinda then brings up the spy they captured, saying she's convinced it was Amelia who sent him. What worries her even more, though, is the mask the spy wore. It bore the mark of the wildcat traffickers, a powerful guild in Rayford. Their primary trades include smuggling, assassination, drugs, and human trafficking. They're rotten to the core, taking on only the dirtiest jobs. Many of their members are skilled ex-mercenaries, making them an incredibly dangerous and secretive force. Ghislain surprised Belinda that knows so much, especially considering she rarely leaves the castle. She simply replies that she learned all this before she even started working there. In any case, she warns him to stay alert, since the enemy won't give up so easily. Ghislain truly appreciates her concern, recognizing just how much she cares, and reassures her he'll be fine, especially now that they have Jillian on their side. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shifts. 2 assassins burst out, trailing the carriage from opposite sides. In the blink of an eye, they leap from the sand, aiming straight for Jillian. But this absolute beast of a man doesn't flinch. He grabs a sword in one hand and an axe in the other, effortlessly blocking both their strikes at once. Not only does he stop the attack, he twists his weapon so viciously. The assassin's arms are brutally ripped clean off. Then, without missing a single beat, Jillian slashes through them as if they're paper. More attackers appear, triggering traps they'd already set. Giant logs come crashing down right toward them, but before disaster can strike, Jillian snatches the reins, yanks the bridle, and the horses slam to a halt just in the nick of time. The area is now crawling with eerie assassins, all with weapons fused right into their hands. That's when Virgo steps in, casually, mentioning Jillian was once the captain of the Regresses mercenaries. He mocks Jillian, calling him a coward for disbanding the group, all because of his daughter. But Jillian doesn't seem too bothered by his accusations. Virgo keeps talking, bitterness lacing his words, recalling how he had to live a life he never wanted. After the group fell apart, he tells Jillian not to pretend he doesn't remember his old comrade. It seems Jillian genuinely has no clue who this creepy bastard is. But Virgo's convinced Jillian's just faking it, determined to jog Jillian's memory. Virgo signals his men to attack. Ghislain offers to jump in and help, but Jillian just brushes him off. These guys clearly have unfinished business with him. As the assassins close in to skewer Jillian with their blades, he slices through them like they're vegetables. More come charging from another direction. Jillian braces himself, and the first one gets chopped down instantly. The next attacker doesn't fare much better. His hands are torn apart. Watching from a distance, Virgo isn't surprised. Jillian was captain for a reason, since head-on attacks are pointless. Virgo orders his men to split up and flank him, but Jillian, never one to hesitate, mounts his horse, axe in hand, and charges. One mighty swing, and he obliterates them, not letting a single one get near. Realizing they can't touch him, they target the horse instead, but they still don't stand a chance. Jillian swings his axe like a damn blender, reducing them all to a bloody mess. Finally, Virgo himself leaps into the fight. Jillian swiftly raises his shield to defend, furious and spitting pure rage. Virgo screams that Jillian destroyed his entire life and won't be allowed to ruin his plans too. For that, Jillian must die. Virgo slaughters the horse Jillian was riding, but the big guy leaps off without a scratch. Virgo wastes no time lunging at him with his sword, but Jillian meets the blow head-on with his axe. In the middle of their brutal clash, Jillian calmly tells him he's no longer the captain of the Regresses mercenaries. Then, he lands a crushing blow that leaves Virgo staggering. With ease, Jillian tosses him aside, blood dripping from his mouth. Virgo struggles to comprehend. If Jillian's not the captain, then who is? Jillian begins channeling his mana, stating that he's cast aside his past. Now he's nothing more than a loyal subordinate of young Lord Ghislain. The declaration leaves Virgo utterly stunned, furious that the man who wrecked his life is now acting so calm. He charges him like a madman. The two clash again, their weapons colliding in a brutal dance. But it's obvious Virgo is the one struggling, driven purely by anger. He accuses Jillian of destroying the mercenary company. After Jillian left, everything collapsed. Virgo lost his power and had to live in disgrace just to survive. But Jillian says nothing. He just keeps swinging, attack after attack, pushing Virgo back. Finally, Virgo lands a solid kick that shatters Jillian's shield. He roars that he was willing to throw away his whole life, to make the Regresses mercenaries legendary. But Jillian tossed it all away, only to serve as a lapdog for some pampered noble. Virgo hurls his deadly ninja daggers, but Jillian spins his axe and knocks away 3 of them. Then Virgo rushes in, dagger in hand, but it sails right past Jillian. As their intense clash rages on, no matter how formidable Jillian once was, Virgo is absolutely confident. Jillian's nowhere near as powerful as he used to be. While Jillian squandered his time trying to cure his daughter, Virgo relentlessly kept fighting, forging himself in endless battles. He's utterly convinced this cheap Zeus knockoff is no match for him now. Virgo then swiftly snatches the 3 daggers from the ground and hurls them straight at Jillian. But the absolute unit, Jillian, casually catches them with his bare hand, as if they were nothing. As Virgo charges again, Jillian swings his axe, and though the strike comes within inches of Virgo's skull, he narrowly manages to dodge just in time. Jillian then channels mana into his hand, conjuring controlled air. effortlessly halting another dagger. He calmly asks Virgo if revenge is truly his only motivation. Virgo, stunned by Jillian's casual display of mana control, quickly realizes that Jillian hadn't even begun to unleash his full power. Until now, before Virgo can even react, Jillian's axe comes crashing straight into his face, launching him with brutal force into a nearby tree. As the old man calmly walks toward him, he questions why Virgo waited so long to seek his revenge, if revenge was truly all he desired. With a sneer, Virgo admits he already visited Jillian's former home, but found no sign of the once feared Ratatosk, Mercenaries captain. Only a feeble old man, not even worth killing. It hits Virgo hard, realizing the man he once idolized was seemingly gone. But Jillian can still see the fire of a true warrior, burning brightly within Virgo. To honor that, he tosses him a sword and draws his own second blade. He reminds Virgo that while he now serves someone else, just for this sacred moment, he'll offer the highest form of respect by facing him now as the captain of the Ratatosk Mercenaries. For Virgo, this is almost surreal. He snatches the dagger and charges forward. The ensuing clash is absolutely brutal. Their weapons clash, sending sparks flying everywhere. For a moment, both warriors seem perfectly matched. But then, Jillian lands a devastating blow. He drives his blade deep into Virgo's ribs. Despite the searing agony, Virgo defiantly refuses to yield and counters. Yet his final, desperate strike falls short. Jillian stands poised, ready to deliver the killing blow. Just before he strikes, Jillian solemnly vows to remember him. The 5th unit commander of the Regresses mercenaries, Virgo Villanos. That acknowledgement means absolutely everything to Virgo. He smiles, proud and finally at peace. Just before Jillian's sword tragically ends his life, with the battle finally over, Jillian quietly picks up the dagger Virgo had wielded. Soon after, Ghislain arrives with Belinda in tow. They're immediately greeted by the gruesome sight of severed limbs and corpses littering the ground. Belinda casually points out there's a ton of money to be made by looting the bodies. Jillian apologizes for the delay, but Ghislain reassures him there's no need for it. In fact, he's now more impressed with Jillian than ever before. Back in his previous life, when Ghislain had just started as a mercenary, stories of Jillian had helped shape his path toward becoming the legendary mercenary king. Now, he's thankful that Jillian's swift actions have earned him such a dependable comrade. Then, he notices Jillian holding the dagger Virgo had used. He asks if Jillian knew the man. Jillian immediately confirms they were once comrades. That mention of old friends triggers a flood of memories for Ghislain. He starts to wonder what his own former companions are up to now, since he hasn't met them yet in this timeline. He's sure they're still out there living their lives, but he's determined to find them and bring them into his party when the time is right. For now, with everything settled, he decides to go along with Belinda's idea and scavenge anything valuable from the bodies. She's more than happy with that and instructs Jillian to take point. But the stoic warrior quickly reminds her that he's absolutely not her subordinate. So 2 grueling days later, the group finally makes it into Peridium territory after what felt like an absolutely endless journey. Having journeyed for countless days, they had at last stepped foot into the land. The burly brute asks if they finally reach Peridium, and our guy readily confirms it. As Ghislain peeks out of the carriage window at his homeland, a powerful wave of emotion washes over him. There's a bittersweet comfort in knowing he has a home to return to. When he first ran away all those years ago, he truly believed he could come back anytime he wanted. But that naive belief turned out to be completely wrong. He then turns his gaze to Jillian and asks what he thinks of this place. Jillian is momentarily taken aback by the sudden question. Unsure how to respond, he simply replies, "It's great, but our guy knows he's just being polite." In truth, though, the place is in absolutely terrible condition, and Jillian, though reluctant to admit it, knows it all too well. The homes are all ancient and crumbling apart, and renovation isn't even a viable option. The fields lie completely barren and desolate, uncultivated because the farmers have all been drafted into the military leaving the land entirely neglected. Jillian shares some disturbing rumors he's heard. That Peridium is constantly embroiled in war due to relentless attacks from the northern barbarians. But now that he's seeing it with his own eyes, he tragically realizes the situation is far worse than he ever dared to imagine. Our boy calmly assures him that fixing all of this is exactly why he needs the unparalleled strength of the Regresses, mercenaries and their formidable captain. He knows the arduous road ahead is going to be long. This fight isn't just about mere survival. It's about utterly wiping out everything tied to Duke Delphinus and boldly reclaiming what was lost. He's determined to breathe new life back into this desolate, dying land, no matter what it takes. Finally, as they roll over the castle's ancient stone pavement, Belinda is suddenly stunned, speechless by an unexpected sight, standing directly in their path. It's none other than our hero's own father, the man who mysteriously vanished. Right at the story's very beginning, the one and only Lord of Peridium